Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are coming to you live on Post-Gazette Sports Now after the Steelers dropped a frustrating decision Sunday against the Patriots in the home opener at Acrisure Stadium. I'm Adam Bittner, digital sports producer for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm here with Paul Zeise, who's in the press box at Acrisure Stadium. Paul, can I get your 30,000-foot view before I start introducing things?
I think the big thing is that the Steelers clearly are not very good offensively. I mean, there's really no other way to say it. It's just not a very good offensive team. I think that, and I've been saying this for a year, I think that Matt Canada is a terrible offensive coordinator. I think he's a terrible hire. I don't think he's an NFL offensive coordinator. We can complain all we want about Mitch Trubisky and the offensive line and this and that and the other thing. The design of this offense is terrible. The play calling is terrible. The concepts are terrible. The lack of imagination is terrible. It's just one of those things where you watch it and you wonder if they're going to continue to try and play offense this way. Now, that being said, the other part of it is you've got a quarterback who is what he is. And he needs a lot of help for things to go well, for him to be able to lead you to wins. And, of course, last week he got 5 turnovers from the defense. And this week, he didn't really get much help. And, this is kind of who they are. So am I surprised that they lost the game? Not really, just because, when your offense is as bad as theirs, you can lose any game.
Yeah, and if you're joining us for the first time, before we get into it, just a reminder to please like the video, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to be doing these chats weekly. We had a great first week last week, so we're glad you're here with us live this week. And please consider there's also a link in the description to a $6 for 6 months of access deal to postgazette.com. You can read everything Paul has to say, everything I have to say, everything our Steelers beat reporters will be writing after the game. So check out that link. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I guess I'll get into my first, real question for you, Paul, is we started hearing those chants for Kenny Pickett in the third quarter. I'm surprised it took that long. I think, to what extent do you think that the offense's issues are rooted in Mitch Trubisky, and to what extent do you think a lot of people want them to be his fault? As opposed to, what he's actually responsible for himself, kind of within that broader context that you were talking about earlier.
Well, I think there's a combination of that. Obviously, to me, you've got a lot of people who are looking for reasons why to put Kenny Pickett in the game. And actually, I think Kenny Pickett would help. Obviously, maybe he will help. But I don't know that if they're going to run the offense the way they're running it right now, I don't care who the quarterback is. They don't give their receivers really good opportunities to make big plays down the field. The running game is very pedestrian, but part of it is I don't know that there's a lot of imagination with respect to the way that they go about running the football. So, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. It's not all Mitch Trubisky's fault. And as I said last week after the game, Adam, Mitch Trubisky is what he is. And if you're going to try and make him something more than that, then you're going to be very, very disappointed. And I think that's probably where we're at right now. People are convinced themselves, I think, in the offseason that Mitch Trubisky was going to be this different player than he was with respect to when he played for the Bears. He is who he is. So, maybe a quarterback change gives them a spark, but I think they've got a lot more problems than just, looking at it and saying, oh, well, if we change the quarterback, everything's going to be okay.
Paul, one thing I noticed on TV, but I'm interested to get your read from being in the stadium today. It felt like there were a lot of throws just very short of the sticks. I think of that one third down, late in the game. I believe it was the second to last drive, the throw to Najee Harris that went nowhere. To what extent, are there guys open down the field that maybe Mitch Trubisky's not seeing? And to what extent does it look like this is, kind of by design is trying to put, Najee Harris in a situation where he can make a play? Because to me, it seemed like, I couldn't really tell whether guys were open downfield. What did you see in that regard?
There was definitely guys open at times. But I think a lot of times Mitch Trubisky doesn't see them, and that's been his MO, hasn't it been? Uh, Sorry about that. It's been his MO, hasn't it been? That's just the way he's gone about his business since he's been in the league. He's been a guy who misses players, and he's been a guy who doesn't necessarily make the right reads and doesn't really read the things the way that they're supposed to, to play out. So I look at that and say, um, he missed some guys down the field. There were definitely guys open. But I think what they want him to do, if you listen to Mike Tomlin this week, they want him to take the underneath stuff. They don't want him to take a lot of chances if it means that he's going to put the ball in play, and be in a position where, he's going to make mistakes or turn the ball over. We saw, he threw a interception today for the first, I think it was his first one of the year. In fact, they don't want that. But you have to have some risk in your offense if you want to get rewarded with big plays. And, I think they had some opportunities to make some big plays today. They didn't for a variety of reasons. But they always seem to be, under Matt Canada, throwing short of the sticks. And that is sort of one of those things that's become a part of what you have, it's become a part of what it's been in the NFL for quite some time. Is let's throw it short of the sticks and hope a guy can make a play. And quite often, more often than not, they don't ever make the play.
Wanted to ask you about those last couple drives. It seemed like they really weren't looking away from Najee Harris at all. It looked like they were looking for him in the passing game, in the running game, just going to him play after play. I think of those last 6 snaps, I think he maybe got 4 of them, 4 looks on those. Did you think that was the right move, or how do you break down those last 2 drives and that attention that Najee Harris was being given?
Well, I mean, I thought late in the game he started running really hard, started actually playing the way that and I sort of remarked on the chat that we do during the game. I think one of the things that is, it looked to me like a guy who suddenly woke up and realized, hey, you know what? Jaylen Warren is actually running harder than me and could replace me. That's what it looked like. Now, that being said, I thought, honestly, that the last drive is what it is. But the drive before, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the drive before was a running play, then one of these short little dump outs, and then they threw something to Najee Harris way short of the sticks and punted. That is an inexcusable sequence of plays. There's no defense of that. And there's no defense. 2 of those plays obviously involved the Harris. I think both of the plays that involved Harris were a complete waste. So there's no defense of what happened and no defense of what went on.
To what extent do you think that the running game struggles? Because I think there were times that they just couldn't get going again today. I mean, to what extent is that a result of defenses are able to creep up if you're not stretching them out and looking a little bit deeper? How hard does that make it for Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren if he's in there? To be making plays in the running game if there's no threat over the top.
Oh, I mean, there's no question. That's a part of it. But part of it, too, is, and I hate to say this, but if you watch Najee Harris run, he's got a little bit of that Le'Veon Bell in him where he tries to be patient and he tiptoes a little bit to the line. And when you watch Jaylen Warren run, they basically run the ball. When Jaylen Warren gets the ball, he gets up into the hole pretty quickly. So I think there's a lot that's going on here, Adam, with this running game. And part of it is I don't know that outside of those last few drives, I don't know that Najee Harris has played with nearly enough of a sense of urgency. And he's not, exploding into the hole. He's not a guy that's getting there. There was a couple of plays today, from where I could sit in the press box, you get a chance to get a bird's eye view. There was a couple of plays today where he just ran to the wrong hole. Like there was a hole there to be run through, and he ran to the wrong gap. I think there's a lot the timing maybe between the offensive line and the running game. But I mean, we're 2 weeks in, and you had how many weeks of training camp? At some point, you need to figure this out. So the run game is a problem for the Steelers, and maybe it won't. And like you said, maybe it won't get better if the passing game doesn't become scary. But I'm going to tell you, watching them, and watching them come off the ball and watching the holes kind of just get collapsed pretty quickly and watching Najee Harris sort of tiptoe to the line, there's a lot going on with the run game.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say you noticed Warren hitting the hole harder. I remember one play in particular. I think it was in the first half that it just seemed like he saw the play develop even before the snap and he was ready to go. To what extent do you think maybe Najee Harris is either trying to do too much, thinking too much, or is it more of an urgency thing and more of a mentality thing? Because I think I have seen what you saw from Jaylen Warren. It just seems like he's going north and south harder.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he gets up into the hole hard. I mean, he runs hard. There was a couple of plays where he got to the hole and there was someone there and he just ran him over. He's a guy that really knows how to play, I think. And Najee Harris, we saw some of that last year, but this year I don't know that he's had a great year so far. It's only 2 games, and I know he's going through an injury thing. But he's got to become far more assertive and far more of a part of the game plan and far more, when I say part of the game plan, I mean far more as somebody they can rely on to move the chains and move the ball. Because if they don't have that base in their offense with Mitch Trubisky as your quarterback, you're not going to go very far.
If you're just joining us on our post-game chat here on postgazette.com and the Post-Gazette YouTube channel, if you want to ask a question, open this video in YouTube. You can add a question or a comment in the chat, and we'll try to get to some before we end the chat here. Paul, another thing that I wanted to ask about was I think on that one touchdown drive, we saw some of that characteristic Matt Canada misdirection. I think of that Gunnar Olszewski, sweep, and that kind of seemed to, be a little bit of a spark. We didn't see that pretty much on any other drive. We saw a lot of it last week in Cincinnati. Are you surprised that we didn't, and that, when they were looking for a spark, especially in that first half, that they didn't try some of that more gadgety stuff to maybe get a big play to kind of get a little bit of momentum going?
I don't know. I mean, I think when you look at the way that they were trying to attack, the one drive where they actually had really success at them, they went no huddle. Like they went no huddle and they hurried up. I mean, they were able to, get up to the line and sort of get their plays in quickly, and they didn't huddle, and it just seemed like they had a little bit of a rhythm. And then they got the ball back and they went back to, just sort of traditional play calling. I think they went 3 and out, if I'm not mistaken. They went touchdown drive and then they went 3 and out. I don't believe we saw a jet sweep today from Chase Claypool. I don't think we saw that today. We didn't see any of the stuff that we saw last week with some of the screens, to like the one to Gentry last week that went for a long way. It was, I think, a very vanilla sort of game plan, but I kind of feel like everything they've done in these first 2 weeks has been designed to just sort of minimize risk and, try and keep them in the game long enough to see if they can win at the end. And it worked last week. But again, as we talked about it last week, you're +5 in turnovers. You shouldn't need, all of overtime to squeak out a win because the other team can't kick field goals. It's just one of those things where they've got to figure something out on this offense. They've got to get it going and get it to a point where it's productive enough that they don't have to rely on their defense to be perfect in order to win games.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned the no-huddle, Paul. If this is a different world and Ben Roethlisberger's, the quarterback, to what extent can you imagine him, as we saw at times last year, just kind of overruling Matt Canada on the field and just kind of doing his own thing? Because I think we saw that at times last year when this offense got bogged down. Do you think we'll get to a point where we're ever going to see that out of Mitch Trubisky, saying, he feels the momentum and he's going to start getting a no-huddle going, or what kind of difference do you think the difference between Ben Roethlisberger and Mitch Trubisky is in that category?
The difference between Ben Roethlisberger is he was a Hall of Famer 19 seasons into his career and basically made it very clear he'll do what he wants to do, and he's earned the right to do that. Mitch Trubisky is a guy who has to know his days are numbered, and he's probably trying not to make any waves at all. he's probably trying to just do what they're asking him to do and hope that it works well enough that he's able to survive, and keep his job. So it's a completely different situation. Last year they had the luxury, or at least not the luxury, but last year they had a quarterback who had the luxury of basically saying, "What you know? What I don't want to run that play, or I don't want to run this, or I don't want to do that, or we want to do this," and they almost had to listen to him. Now, you know what? If Mitch Trubisky doesn't get it done or doesn't want to get it done, you know what will happen? He'll lose his job, and he knows it.
We saw on that 2-point conversion another pretty crazy catch by Deontay Johnson. That's a couple in the last 2 weeks. What are you seeing from him? And do you think he has the ability to improve this season? Is he showing he can make plays that I don't know if he necessarily would have made some of those in the past?
He's definitely come to play this year, and he's made some really difficult catches. That's what you want from your number one receiver. I mean, that he made a heroic catch last week. That if he doesn't do it, the Steelers are probably sitting here 0-1, as opposed to 1-1, and he's made a couple of big catches. This game, I mean, even I'll tell you the one where they thought at first it was a fumble. I mean, that was a huge play, and that was a really difficult catch that he made. If you remember, his knee went down, and then someone picked up the ball and ran it into the end zone. They initially called it a touchdown for the Patriots. That was a really difficult catch that he made. So that's what you want from your number one receiver. I think he's really good, and I think he's gotten better. And you know what? I think Chase Claypool has gotten better. I think those two guys are examples of guys who have taken the next step, at least from a maturity standpoint, and now they're starting to realize their talent.
Kind of on the other end of the receiver scale, it was another pretty quiet day from George Pickens. I think we saw him at on that long catch at the end of the first half, where they just kind of ran out of time and ended up, hurling it deep. But he made a 23-yard catch. What's your idea of where he stands again in this offense after another quiet week, given all, the hype that he, entered the preseason with?
He's got to be frustrated a little bit. He's one of the guys that we've seen down the field that he's been open a little bit. He's had opportunities to make plays, and they haven't thrown it to him. By the same token, again, it's week 2, and he's a rookie. So he'll get his opportunities if he just keeps working on the things that makes him a great receiver and get himself open and get himself in position so that, at some point they start throwing him the ball or they start seeing him. I don't think that he's not. I don't believe for one second that he's not a part of the game plan. I don't. I think the bigger thing is, it's one of those situations where they're not seeing him. Mitch Trubisky's just not seeing him. I believe that he's a part of the game plan. I believe that they're trying to get him the ball. I believe that they want him to be a part of things. But Mitch Trubisky is right now at a place where he's just not seeing them.
Timothy Law in the comments, Paul said, "Why are you guys sugarcoating the play calling? If you just joined us, I think you weren't earlier, but I'm not sure how many people were on the stream at that point. So I'll give you a chance to respond to that and what you think about the play calling, because I thought you were pretty harsh on them earlier."
Well, I said before, I don't think I've never thought Matt Canada is an NFL offensive coordinator. I think he's a guy that has legitimately lived off of one great season he had when he had James Conner and all those guys at Pitt. And really, I mean, I guess there's something to be said. He made Nate Peterman into a superstar. But at the end of the day, if you look at his resume, Adam, take that season out of it, and what excites you about his career? Other than he's been a guy that's been incredibly good at getting jobs, and he's got 15 or 16 stops over the last 20 years, something like that. I mean, he's ridiculous. And to me, if you look at the way that he's trying to run offense, it looks like a college offense. It really does. The problem is you might get a jet sweep here and there, but these linebackers are too fast. It's not, you know what I mean? And safeties and everything, they're too fast. If that's going to work, it's going to work because you caught them off guard. You caught, the element of surprise. But in terms of the idea that you're going to outrun somebody to the perimeter, you're just not doing that. I mean, these guys are all too fast in the NFL. You look at the chart when they chart his throws and where Mitch Trubisky's throwing the ball. If you watch New England today, how many throws did Mac Jones make that were in between the numbers, like in the middle of the field, just crossing routes, little post patterns, so those kind of things. They killed the Steelers in there. The Steelers never, everything they do is to the perimeter. So even if you do catch it, you're usually running out of bounds. And I think the design of the offense is bad. I think the play calling is bad. And you know what? Quite frankly, the execution wasn't much better.
Is there anything worth saying, Paul, about the huge mistake that Gunnar Olszewski committed there? That led to a couple plays later the Patriots scoring the touchdown that ended up being the game-winning touchdown. Is there anything other to say than that's just inexcusable and can't happen? And that's arguably the difference between, as bad as the Steelers' offense played today. If you don't make that mistake, then who knows what the result ends up being. I thought it was indefensible for a guy who was brought in specifically to do this.
I would agree. That was a really bad play. In his defense, those things happen. These guys aren't perfect, so he made a mistake. But you can't make that mistake more than once, right? If he does that again, they'll find a new punt returner. I mean, look, he's been a good player for them. He's been exactly what they think he's going to be. Reliable third down receiver. Even today, I think he even ran a little jet sweep thing to him, and he got about 12 or 13 yards. In general, he's pretty good at catching punts, but that play really, to me, is probably the difference in the game. And there's one or two of those plays in all these NFL games. You look all day long, a lot of these NFL games, they're all basically coming down to the wire. They're all, pretty hotly contested. In general, there's one or two big plays like that that's the difference in the game. I mean, I was watching the Saints game. I mean, it's 13-3 or whatever it was. And, Jameis Winston throws a pick, or actually it was 10-3, I think. Jameis Winston throws a pick six. Now it's 17-3, changes the entire game. I think it ended up 20-10 or something. At the end of the day, those kind of things, those big, high impact plays, you need them to go your way. And last week they went the Steelers' way. Today, you know what? Obviously the big play went the other way.
Want to get into the defense a little bit, Paul. Obviously, the big story going into the week was TJ Watt's injury and his absence for this pass rush. What kind of difference would that make? I thought it made a pretty huge difference. I can think of, several plays where Mac Jones just kind of had a ton of time to pick the secondary apart. And you mentioned those posts and those plays earlier. How many of those do you think he would have been able to make, had TJ Watt been in there today?
Well, I mean, again, obviously, when you lose TJ Watt, it's completely different. I had a laugh this week because there were actually some people trying to run the idea that somehow the Steelers weren't going to miss a beat on defense without TJ Watt. Listen, there's one guy like him in the entire league, and it's him. There's some other elite players. Obviously, Aaron Donald's an elite player. There's some other guys like, some other corners that are elite players. But in terms of what TJ Watt does, there's only one. And he's a guy who enables you to do so many different things. He enables you to be able to put pressure on the defense with four guys. Or put pressure on the quarterback with four guys. He enables you to just, even with three guys. He's a game changer. And not just that, Adam. It's not just the sacks. It's not just all of that other stuff. He's the guy when you absolutely need a play to be made, he makes it, right? He makes plays that nobody else can make. So clearly you take him out of the equation. They're different. Some of what the Patriots did was sort of that quick passing game, so I don't know that he would have made that big of a difference. But some of those, third, there was a couple of third and longs that they converted, and then there was the one third and like 20-something that they almost converted. Those plays probably don't get with. If TJ Watt's in there, Mac Jones does not have that much time to stand back there and wait for his receivers to get downfield before. So it made a difference. But really, what we're talking about, the defense gave up that long pass right before half, the touchdown, and then Gunnar Olszewski. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, you can't say, well, you can't just take away those two plays because those two plays happened. I get it. But the point is the defense played really, really well. And frankly, the long pass down the sideline, I give that's one of those ones where I give credit to the receiver. I think it was Keller Witherspoon was there. He made a good defensive play. He did what he had to do. It wasn't like he got toasted. It wasn't like he got burnt. The other guy just made a play. So I mean, the defense played fine. The Gunnar Olszewski thing, if you put your defense in bad situations and you give them short fields, it's going to lead to, you hope that you can keep them out of the end zone, but you're not always going to do that. So those are their 2 touchdowns. Think about that. Those were their 2 touchdowns. A bad special teams play by the Steelers and a miraculous great play by the receiver. So the defense, with or without, the defense was fine. And I don't know that necessarily TJ Watt would have done anything different, given the fact that that's really the only 2 things that the defense gave up.
Yeah, I think I saw several people on Twitter say that Keller Witherspoon got mossed on that play, and I think that's a good way of looking at it because those are just plays that Randy Moss made back in the day, right? And we all remember that was just part of his greatness, and it wasn't necessarily about the defense that was being played on him. It was more about the kind of player he was, and I certainly wouldn't put Nelson Aguilar in that category, but he made that play.
Well, and he had a really good game for them today. I mean, he made a lot of plays for them. He really did. He did a lot of good things for them. So, obviously he's not Randy Moss. That's not what I'm saying. But, he did play well for them today.
Another thing that I kind of noticed was that it seemed like Cam Hayward was getting even more attention than he did normally. And I felt like he was a little bit invisible out there. Can you talk a little bit about the impact that the TJ Watt's absence is going to have on him specifically when he's the other big pass rushing threat on this, on this defensive front?
Well, remember last week when people were ready to put Alex Highsmith in the NFL, the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Do you remember that? Did we hear his name called? I mean, I'd have to look at the numbers. I can't think of a single play the guy made today. Not one. I'd have to look at the play-by-play again, and I'd have to look at the numbers. But am I wrong? Was there some high-impact play that he made today that I missed?
I can't think of a play that anyone made, to be honest with you. But he's definitely at the top of the list.
There were some decent plays that were made by certain players. But my point is, I look at that and I say Highsmith, really without the benefit of having T.J. Watt on the other side, all of a sudden became a pretty, ordinary player. And I think the thing that you can't account for, okay, is how much of an impact Watt has on everybody else on the defense, because the offense has to account for him. They have to account for him on every single play. Take him out of the equation, guess what? We can block Malik Reed with one guy, right? We can block Malik Reed with one guy or whatever. And now all of a sudden we can put more emphasis on the other side where Hayward and Highsmith are and keep that side safe, because we don't have to worry about Watt coming after us. So it's a big issue. You just hope that they continue to just sort of figure out how to scheme around not having Watt. But again, despite not having Watt, nothing about today's game had anything to do with the defense, other than to give up they gave up that the big, long touchdown pass right before the half. And frankly, that was just a great play by a receiver that you tip your cap to. The defense was fine. You give up, 17 points, especially when 7 of them come, as a result of a special teams gaffe. You should win the game. They just, but you're not going to win the game if your offense is as bad as their offense has been.
Paul, one other question I had for you about the defense was, it seemed like New England was having a lot of success running the ball and then just kind of got away from it for long stretches. And then I think we saw in that final drive, they just kind of ran it right at the Steelers. Do you think that do you think they could have put the game away earlier if they had tried to run it at the Steelers a little bit more? Were you surprised that they didn't?
Well, I'll tell you, the last three drives, the first for the Patriots, they had a 3rd and 5. And I don't know if you remember, they threw like a little stop route down the sidelines, and Mac Jones underthrew the receiver. Obviously, the receiver was actually open. It could have been a first down. I thought they should have ran the ball because I thought, the way they were cutting up the Steelers, if they run the ball there, because the Steelers are, thinking pass there. If they run one of those counters or one of those delay handoffs, if they get 3 or 4 yards, now you can start to think about, hey, if we go for it here on 4th and 1 and get it, we can run another 2.5 minutes off the clock. So I didn't understand why they, just went to the deep pass. And again, I mean, it was going to connect if it was a good throw, but that every time you throw the ball, that's what you risk, right? I mean, you risk that there's a lot that can go wrong there. And then the next drive, I don't understand what they did. The next drive, if you think about it, they had a 3rd and 2. And they threw the ball, and that was the one that was a disaster. They threw it in, and he actually threw it into double coverage, and they were lucky it wasn't picked off. So those were 2 sequences in a row. Now, the third time they got the ball back is when they decided, okay, we're just going to start running the ball. And listen, if you watched their running game versus the Steelers' running game, okay, if you watched them, the major difference was the design of the runs, the way they were blocked, and even the quarterback and his ability to handle the ball and get it to certain places in the backfield, so that running backs were taking the handoffs full steam ahead, or they were taking the handoff, planting their foot and going the other way and running through a wide gap. That's what that's what I was talking about somewhat with the play design of the Steelers. I didn't see a lot of that from the Steelers. The Patriots, they really, and it's kind of amazing because Matt Patricia, I think, is their play caller, isn't he? I mean, what are we talking about here? The Patriots offense, I don't think it's great, but I thought the structure of it, and I thought some of the play calling were far superior to the Steelers.
Paul, we got a comment from Steelers fan 2288. What are the chances we see Kenny Pickett in Week 4 against the Jets? I'm going to rephrase the question a little bit myself. To what extent do you think Kenny Pickett's going to change anything of what we're seeing if suddenly he's in there as opposed to Mitch Trubisky? Because kind of to the point you were making earlier, you've got these play design issues, and you've got this conservative kind of nature that I don't think that that's necessarily going to change if Kenny Pickett's in there. I don't think you're going to see a dramatically different offense. I think, the one thing we talked about is maybe the vision and that Trubisky is not seeing open guys where they are. To what extent do you think Kenny Pickett's going to change any of that?
Well, he's a different kind of quarterback. He probably throws the ball maybe a little better than Mitch Trubisky in some respects. By the same token, if they're going to call the same plays that they're calling now, I just don't see how it's going to improve much. I do think that there's zero chance they're going to make a change with 4 days to get ready for the Browns. Okay? Zero. But if they go out and they play against the Browns, Adam, have another day where the offense looks terrible, right? Can't move the ball at all, can't score, can't maintain the ball, can't all that stuff that we've seen. And God forbid you add another turnover or two. It wouldn't shock me if they started to think about, hey, we've got 10 days to get ready for the Jets. Maybe now's the time to make a change. I don't know that it changes much, Adam, because, again, there's so many issues with this offense. But it would make the people happy. Then what happens if the offense still stinks for 2 or 3 weeks? Do we start chanting for Mason Rudolph? I think there's a lot of issues with this offense that go way beyond whoever is the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of my read on the situation too, is that, it'd be one thing if Mitch Trubisky was making a bunch of mistakes and, and really blowing it. I feel like a lot of what he's doing has been the product of what he's being asked to do. And maybe he's not taking the chances because he doesn't want to lose the job because he made the big mistake, because he was too much of a gunslinger. But it's just hard for me to imagine the overall structure changing if you put Kenny Pickett in there, because I think they both bring that mobility to the table that Ben Roethlisberger didn't have a year ago, and I think that was the source of optimism. But it seems like there are definitely some things like the no-huddle that we were talking about that it's just not going to change if the Steelers don't change philosophically.
And they got to throw the ball down the field. They've got to be, they've got to stop being afraid to throw the ball down the field. They've got to stop being afraid to throw the ball into the middle of the field. And I think that for a while there, and it changed a little bit as the game wore on, but for a while there, it was, first down run, second down run, third down hope. I think that they've got to commit to who they want to be and what they want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that's all I have for you this week, Paul. Everyone, before we sign off here, just want to remind you, please like this video. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to be doing this weekly. Paul and I will be back on Thursday after Steelers Browns. And then we will be doing more all on YouTube during the week. We'll have Christopher Carter. He'll be hosting the North Shore Drive tomorrow morning on the YouTube channel. So there'll be plenty of Steelers post-game coverage. I'll be writing for tomorrow. I think, Paul, will you be writing for Monday morning? Yes. Check all that out on post-gazette.com. And if you haven't already, please check out the subscription deal down in the description. 6 months of access to postgazette.com for just $6. So we're going to sign off, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks to everyone who stopped by.
All right. We'll see you now.